Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's early, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Excellent. Welcome back to the second day of Environment Virginia. This morning we've got a lot planned for you. We're going to begin with our keynote speaker, followed by the award of the Erchul Award, and then follow that up with some more outstanding panels before we all depart for a safe journey back home. It is my great pleasure this morning to introduce this morning's speaker, Mr. Bill Shireman, who is President and CEO of Future500, a consumer and environmental advocate who understands business. Bill has always lived two lives, one as an entrepreneur and the other as an activist. Today, he likes to bring together forces from the left and the right and believes in a market-based, systems-oriented approach. Bill blends economic, ecological, and systems theory to develop practical solutions that meet multiple needs. At Future500, his objective is to drive systematic solutions to global sustainability challenges, from climate change to fair trade to sustainable economic growth. Now, he takes great pride in finding the common ground between what we might consider in the climate in today's country would-be enemies, those people who a little bit polarized on the right and left. And Bill's message today is really a simple one. Can we protect the environment and have a safe, healthy environment while still accomplishing the business needs? And Bill's today, I want to welcome you with a great message here at Environment Virginia. So, Bill.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for coming out bright and early. I have to apologize this morning. I'm feeling a little bit disoriented. It's been with me for a while. It started last November, actually, late on election day. I was moving in one direction, running my life the way I do with one set of expectations, trying to save the world from climate disaster, ocean collapse, forest collapse. Pretty clear on my next steps that were coming, one after another. And I was in San Francisco, maybe this was the problem, but when all of a sudden, this earthquake, this political earthquake, shifted the planet right out from under my feet. And I found myself in new territory, unexpected territory. Happened again on January 20th, which happens to be my birthday. Maybe it happened to some of you as well. Most of us expected a status quo Democrat to be occupying the White House, carrying forward the Obama climate agenda, Clean Power Plan, methane regulation, Paris Accords, gradual unwinding of coal, gradual winding up of clean energy, low carbon economy. Instead, I don't know if you remember this, but we elected a renegade kind of Republican who promised to reverse the climate agenda of the Obama administration and even the Bush administration. And President Trump has followed through. Clean Power Plan, gone. Methane regulation, gone. End of coal, delayed. Paris Accords, on hold. Now, when our lives are moving in one direction pretty consistently, and then they suddenly shift, it's easy to focus so much on what we have lost that we fail to see the new opportunities that we've gained through the change. It's easy to focus so much on the new barriers that we face, that have been thrust in our way that we don't notice over here that some of the old barriers have begun to deteriorate and go away. So, at my advanced age, I can now offer you 5 insights that I've gained through painful experience about how to respond to unexpected, disruptive change in our personal and political and career lives. First, these times are genuinely dangerous. They are dangerous, times of change. But the danger comes from failing to adapt. It's not the danger in the situation itself. It's the fact that we are tempted to try to crawl back to the beloved who left us, to the boss who fired us, to the situation that we've expected to continue, but that has been taken away. And it only gets worse when we do that. Instead, we need to flow with the change, understand why the change happened, that actually is where our path was leading. We thought it was leading over here, but it actually was leading to here. Second, the disruption in our lives, last November and any time, requires that we change. Not that other people change, that we change individually and as a group. Reality has changed. If we don't change with it, if we don't adapt, then a part of us dies, maybe a big part of us. Third, once we accept this, once we're clear that we need to change, we in the business community, we in the environmental community, we in the political community, we in each of our careers and our lives, once we're clear on that, we notice that the disruption actually offers some benefits, that it has cleared away some of the barriers in our path that we got used to. We accepted those barriers. Those were a part of our reality. We knew that they were difficult, but we accepted them. Now we begin to see that some of those barriers have been at least partially removed. And fourth, we begin to understand that attaining the systemic change that is now within our reach requires intention, conscious awareness and intention. It requires planning. It requires strategy. It proves that we actually have an impact on our world. We're not just being carried through it as we might have been before. We need to make decisions, and those decisions have impacts. Fifth, fear is our greatest enemy. Fear focuses us on what we've lost. It makes us look behind and not ahead. The ones who fear, the ones who are consumed by anger, looking for enemies, trying at all times and only to resist the change, are the ones who are controlled by the change and become its victims. We don't need fear. We need a plan. So, I speak with progressives, I speak with conservatives, I speak with corporations and activists. I recognize the dangers. I don't discount them. They're great. Oh my God, they are, in military terms, in economic terms, in ecological terms, they're as significant as they can be. I also recognize the losses for those who were attached to and expecting the regulatory changes that were in place to protect climate. For example, I understand that there have been setbacks. They may not be as significant as we fear, but they're real. I also recognize the opportunities, and I wish some of those opportunities were clearer, and I wish I knew exactly what those opportunities were, but I know that they're out there, and I know some of those opportunities. I'm going to talk about some of them. And I don't ask about our chances for success. People often say, well, how do you think things are going to turn out? I say, well, it depends on what we do. it's not a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. It's a matter of what we decide to do with what we have. We can turn this moment into a net gain, a positive step forward to protect the environment and protect prosperity and protect freedom all at once. I don't say this as just a theorist. I think good theory is founded on great practice. Great practice builds on great theory. And I work with this every day. My days are typically dealing with situations like this. At Future500, the organization that I am proud to lead, we often get calls from corporations when they've been attacked by environmental groups. Greenpeace has unfurled a banner, somebody has issued a boycott campaign, and so on, and they'll say, well, come in, these crazy folks have, unfurled this banner on our building. What can we do? I'm dealing with this narrative, the evil corporate enemy, a narrative that sells, as we know, in this polarized media and political environment. You've got to have an enemy. It's got to be an arch enemy. It's got to be pure evil, and you got to fight it to the death. You cannot ever collaborate with the enemy. So this is the narrative that we work with, and we bring the various sides together. We work with energy companies, consumer products companies, utilities, retail, consumer brands, and so on, to find common ground between them and the activist groups from the social and environmental community that are often attacking them. Now, in the process, I find that it's really the individuals within all of these institutions who are the ones that produce the solutions. And I have a set of heroes that I have met and discovered across the aisle in the years that I've been doing this. When the Sierra Club and Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, Safeway, the major retail beverage companies were battling in California over a bottle bill, a deposit law, nickel deposit law on beverage containers. Some of you are familiar with it. The industry was the diabolical enemy, and the activists were in battle with them, martyrs to the cause, losing for 17 years in a row. When we entered in, we were able to find common ground between the activists and the industry, and to develop in California what became the most cost-effective container recycling program in the country by far, and still is today. The heroes in that battle were at least two. There were many of them, but this is one. Bill Coors, head of Coors Brewing Company. I went and saw Bill in the heat of that battle. I was the environmentalist in that battle. I was trying to get a bottle bill passed in California. We were about to put something on the ballot for it. I gave Bill Coors a call. He said, "You're the first environmentalist to call me to calmly ask questions and engage in a conversation. Why don't you come out to Golden, Colorado, and we'll have a chat?" And I came out to Golden, Colorado. Bill Coors sat me down and laid out how he thought a bottle bill could work. Instead of deluging me with the standard bullet points about how this was a terrible idea that would tear apart the economy, he came forward with a solution, and I liked that solution, and we took it back to California. And we adapted it, we worked with it. So Bill Coors working secretly with me behind the scenes while we were battling the industry, and then the other guy was this, and I want to say, first of all, about Bill Coors, for those of you who are approaching as old as I am, the Coors brothers were the Koch brothers media characters of a prior generation. They were the ones that were positioned as the evil right-wing figures who were going to take down the progressive cause. But it turned out that Bill Coors was not at all like the narrative, and it taught me that arch conservatives, if you will, free enterprise folks, and environmentalists really can get along. We have a tremendous amount in common, and in fact, our ideas are complementary to one another. They cannot be separated from one another, and I believe that's true about Charles and David Koch today as well. The other guy that is my hero, a guy named Chuck Collings. head of the third largest retail giant in California, a religious right conservative. Again, these are communities that are not supposed to care about the environment or get along with the progressive left. And yet, Chuck Collings was a man of integrity who wanted to solve a problem. And he told me, if you can solve my problem, the cost and difficulty of returning containers in stores, then I'll solve your problem. And he did. Chuck Collings was the driving force that enabled us to pass a California bottle bill in the face of enormous opposition from the beverage industry. And how he did it was when August Busch, the head of the largest brewer, sent his folks into California to shoot down our plan, he got together with the other two heads of the supermarket industry in the state and called him and said, August, we really like your beer. We'd like to keep selling it. And we want you to sit at the table and work out a deal with the environmentalists. And August Busch became our biggest supporter at that point because he knew it was in his business interest. His customers wanted him to solve a problem for them, and he did, and we passed California bottle bill, the best, most cost-effective bill in the country, with the pressure of a small NGO coalition working with the retailers who motivated the beverage industry to all come together and pass what became the most effective law of its kind in the country. And this was a great learning experience for me because it said that if we drop the narratives of demonization and polarization that pull us apart and prevent us from working together, then we actually can win. The winning doesn't come in the conflict. The winning comes in the collaboration that follows the conflict. And that's a model that we have followed ever since. What we learned from that were two powerful tactics that deployed together really can save the world. One is the Greenpeace effect. We all know what that is. The term originated with the Brent Spar incident. It was an incident decades ago where Greenpeace proved its market power in a somewhat fraudulent way, but proved its market power. Companies do not want to be targeted by Greenpeace. Consumer and retail brands in particular do not ever want to be a part of a battle. Combine that with the Walmart effect, which is the power that retailers and consumer brands have to drive change throughout the entire global supply chain, and you have a powerful combination. The Greenpeace effect, motivating change at the top through short bursts of often combative campaigns. The conflict serves a purpose, but too often it's carried out for too long, leaves too many battle scars, and too difficult. But if it's short-lived and gets people to the table, then the Walmart effect can take effect. That's when businesses come together and they say, well, how do we solve this problem productively, pragmatically? What can we do in the marketplace? And where the marketplace isn't enough, what do we need to do with policy? You don't run first to policy. You run first to the market. You do what you can do, and then you fix the policy in order to make that work better. We've done that in the forestry sector for the last 20 years, all the way through today. With Mitsubishi, it was the power of the Mitsubishi companies and the commitment of Rainforest Action Network, which had been engaged in a battle with them, a boycott of them. When we entered in, we were able to combine their power, and the Mitsubishi companies became the first set of companies to adopt procurement standards that said we are only going to buy sustainably harvested timber and wood products. That drove the marketplace. 400 other companies joined with them, and it transformed the market for timber so that there now was a robust market for sustainably harvested timber. That has led other companies like Disney to become champions of sustainable timber. After a short campaign focused on the company discovered what it could do to drive further change, and it made its change. And Disney, combined with a few other companies, motivated some of the worst operators ecologically in Asia pulp and paper, to become some of the best operators on the planet in sustainable harvesting globally. And it happened with no regulations, no legislation, just in the marketplace. It's continued. The Greenpeace effect plus the Walmart effect has driven a market transformation with these groups working with these companies, sometimes in conflict, but usually in collaboration, to drive the operators of forests and the buyers of forest products to make changes globally. It's led to a 100-fold reduction in deforestation for soy in just the last few years, this process, and it's continuing on. And it's beginning to happen now to protect oceans as well. It's having a global impact, no treaties, no laws, and massive improvements. Hasn't done enough, but it can do more. I'm going to move on quickly because I can tell that I'm going to run out of time if I keep giving you more details than you probably need. But the point of this is that at this critical juncture in our political history, we have an opportunity to move forward that hasn't been presented through the succession of relatively status quo presidents that we've enjoyed over the past several decades. Future500, my organization, is taking this opportunity to convene a set of stakeholders that we have selected in Dallas in about 2 weeks. And what we're going to do is develop a bipartisan environmental agenda, a no-regrets agenda that Republicans and Democrats and libertarians and even climate skeptics can support. It's not a sexy agenda. It's not hot. It's not media-friendly. But it works. It works probably better than anything the Republicans or Democrats, certainly on their own, could pass through legislation. Now, if it's that good, and so many people on the right and the left support it, why isn't it just established? Well, we hope that it will be, but there is one industry that's against it, and it's not the industry that you might think. I'll explain who that is in a moment. But first, let me give you some facts about our political situation. The most powerful industry that's driving the campaign against climate protection is not the oil companies, it's not the gas industry, it's not even coal. The industry that is most opposed to effective action on climate is the political industry. The political industry is a $3 billion a year industry that manufactures wedge issues to divide us. Now, President Trump has come into office at a time of extreme polarization, set up by a political process which, as he said, has largely been gamed to pit one set of Americans against another set of Americans. And in a lot of ways, President Trump actually disrupted that process. He was not the favored candidate of the establishment on either the right or the left. He played in, perhaps unintentionally, to the narratives that had been set up for those candidates to oppose one another, but he splintered those narratives. He took the conservative narrative, and he won a set of interest groups with that, but he also borrowed the progressive narrative and added it together and managed to get what was an electoral college majority. Now, for President Trump to be successful, there are several factors that are in play. First of all, President Trump needs to win. We know this psychologically. This is a man who needs to win. He's been winning all his life. Winning is his brand. He will hold on to the process of winning and do whatever he needs to do to win. And if there are barriers that emerge, he will find a way through those barriers as well as he can. As has been proven with the health care bill, will soon be proven with tax reform and others, he needs Democrats in order to win. he can't do it with just Republicans. We'll wait and see. Maybe the Republican Party will have a magic melding and all uniformly support health care reform, tax reform, and so on. But it's not likely to happen. And there's only one circumstance in which it could happen, and that's a very expensive circumstance for the nation. President Trump is already realizing that he needs Democrats to win. So his politics are going to change a little bit, I think, in the next 3 years. Number 3, whether you supported President Trump or opposed President Trump, you don't want him to fail. None of us really want him to fail. It's too dangerous to have an injured bear in the White House. The consequences are too great. So we have to find ways to help President Trump win. And we want him to win in ways that we want. And so if those of us are in the room want to have wins for the environment, they're also good for the economy, we have to present those to this president. I have a lot of folks who are friends in the progressive community. I know they are angry and upset and fearful. And their priority is to resist this president, to try to hold out for these 2, 4, 6, 8 years until they can restore what they had before. My advice to them is resist, but redirect. Resist, close off those doors that you don't want this president going through, but leave a door open for the president to have a victory. Number 4, environment is a bipartisan issue. It has been fraudulently sold to the public and to a small section of the voting public as a partisan issue, but it's a bipartisan issue. It's a bipartisan commitment. We can help this president be a climate hero in the 2018 to 2020 period. And even if we don't succeed, by building an alliance between the right and the left, between Republicans and Democrats for the environment, that's good for jobs, good for the economy, we win at all levels. We win at the state level, we win at the regulatory level, and we win, very importantly, in the marketplace, where I think most of our victories can really come. Trump voters saw this man as a change agent, a strong alpha male winner, middle America's champion, a man who spoke his mind, and a man who is authentic. And that's the president that they elected. They need to have an opportunity to see that president in action. Every major piece of federal legislation with the environment has been passed with a bipartisan vote in Congress and signed by a Republican president. The most effective global treaty for the environment was under Ronald Reagan, who said preservation of the environment is not a liberal or conservative challenge, it's common sense. Under President Nixon, it was NEPA, US EPA, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and others. Unfortunately, we have a political system, though, that has used wedge issues to divide the nation between two large voting blocs. Wedge issues that are of very little interest to vested interests, and there's a good reason that the wedge issues that we face are not high priorities to the manufacturing sector, the pharmaceutical sector, the military sector, labor, environment, any of the large sectors that have a lot of political power. The wedge issues that are chosen to divide Americans are not particularly high priorities for those industries because these are issues that can be sacrificed. These are issues that, as you notice, are never resolved. It doesn't matter who's in charge. Abortion, guns, immigration, climate, never resolved. In this order. These are the ones that the political industry uses. The political industry is taking advantage of a simple fact that about half of us are conservative and half of us are progressive. I like to call the progressive the liberators and the conservatives the protectors. Because these two groups, these two natural groups, each bring an essential part of the solution to every problem to the table. And it's only when they come together that we can protect the environment and business at the same time. For those of you who want your review on political science, Rousseau, the classic progressive liberal, believed that people are selfless and that nature is supportive and safe. He expressed the view of the liberators, the folks who say if you just let people run free, they will serve one another gallantly and selflessly, and they will do good for others. Hobbes was the theorist for the opposite perspective. Nature is dangerous. People are selfish. Now, who's right? Obviously, they're both right. People are selfless, and they are selfish. Nature is supportive, and it is dangerous. It's only when you bring these two views together that you're able to protect society and advance society at the same time. If you divide them, then you naturally have a dangerous society that is regressing. And that, unfortunately, is where we are right now. 70% in our experience, and go to polls even on the wedge issues, 70% of us can agree, from the left to the right, from the far left to the far right, we can come to terms. It is difficult. We know this. We engage in this issue all the time. But we can come to terms. But 30% of us or so are more fundamentalists. We are Rousseau. We are Hobbes. We embody those principles. And we carry them out feeling that we are the righteous ones fighting the infidels. And unfortunately, those fundamentalists can't get along very well. What happens in our political process is that the fundamentalists try to drive a wedge between the left and the right. The conservatives say, nature is dangerous, people out there are selfish, we've got to protect ourselves. The folks on the left say, nature is good and kind, and people are friendly and supportive and selfless always. We've got to release them at all times. And they keep each other apart. They keep their mainstreams apart. The political industry is all about exploiting this division, using wedge issues to drive a wedge between the left and the right so that the 70% of us who can get along can't even communicate with one another. We've ended up segregating our media, segregating our communications, segregating our political parties into these two separate baskets. And very few of us say, you know, we really need to get the extremists to work together. We'll go anywhere except working with Trump supporters if we're anti-Trump or working with Trump opponents if we're pro-Trump. We'll go anywhere, but never there, never there. The problem with this is that the process has been codified in law. We now have laws that give the ability to choose our two candidates only to members of political parties. And yet, most people are abandoning the two political parties. The biggest growth voting community are independents, people who have opted out of choosing our candidates at all in the primaries. They don't even have a choice. That means that 15% or so fundamentalist Democrats with 20% mainstream, the Democrats have to cultivate that more rigid progressive base. And the Republicans, it's even tougher. 15% of Republicans against 10% mainstream. The fundamentalist base on the Republican side decides the candidates, chooses those candidates, and most of us have to choose between the candidates that come out of that system. And this is the system that the political industry operates on. So this is the system that we have to deal with. We heard about this. You've all probably heard, President Eisenhower's forecast of the military-industrial complex. Well, unfortunately, this is a phenomenon that has become not just military and industry, but tens, hundreds, thousands of industries all working to protect their status quo interests, our status quo interests. And these are not the enemy. These are all of us, every one of us, labor unions, every industry association, every manufacturing association, the NGO community. We all are part of these status quo groups, and they all work on this formula to keep the nation divided, because on their issue, it helps to keep us separate. So what can we do about this? Our organization is all about bringing these communities together. Business together with activists, Republicans with Democrats, conservatives, libertarians, progressives, all together. And we understand pragmatically that money matters. So we also like to bring in the political donors, the philanthropists, the wholesale level of politics, if you will, the manufacturing level. We're bringing together about 150 executives, donors, and experts in Dallas, Texas, in a couple of weeks now. For those of you in any of these communities who may want to participate with us, this is it's invitation only, but it's for folks that are interested in actually helping to communicate with others and help solve problems. So if you are interested in coming, please do let me know, and we'll do our best to get you an invitation. What we're going to be doing there is presenting a Dallas Declaration, a declaration that folks, political donors, environmental philanthropists, some of the most generous environmental philanthropists on the face of the planet, corporate executives from the consumer product sector, from the energy, oil, gas, retail, and others, environmental leaders from mainstream groups all the way to Greenpeace, Rainforest Action Network, and others, and political leaders, folks who understand from inside the corrosive process of division that is a great danger, not just to the environment and the nation. We're going to make a declaration that environment can no longer be a divisive wedge issue, that we have to pull it out from that wedge issue. We're going to develop a bipartisan agenda. This is the third year of this process. We developed the agenda last year. We identified the companies and the officials that need to be a part of the change. We're inviting them to come this year. It's an oceans and water agenda in which we've identified the systemic solutions that need to be taken. And these are actually mostly changes in the supply chain. Some of the world's largest companies have already begun some of these changes. There's a set of companies that we believe are positioned to drive further changes to protect the world's oceans, to keep the oceans healthy. This is our future food supply. 60% of our protein in a generation is going to come from the oceans if we haven't destroyed their productive capacity by that time. In lands and forests, we also have an agenda of actions, again, mostly that companies can take in the marketplace through pressure and collaboration with the environmental community. We have a few corporate heroes that are leading the drive, and we have a set of companies that we believe can play pivotal roles in this process. We aren't attacking any companies. We are praising those companies that are taking the actions that are needed. We're encouraging those other companies to take the actions that still need to happen. In air and climate, we also have an agenda, and quite frankly, at our last meeting, it was a price on carbon that was identified overwhelmingly by the folks in the room as the number one step that needs to be taken. So this is public policy. And so we have an agenda of things that companies can do to help promote a price on carbon. Not an expensive price on carbon like the cap and trade system that we almost passed in 2009, but a relatively revenue neutral price on carbon that's good for growth, good for jobs, good for the economy, good for the retail sector, good for consumer products, and supported by the oil and gas industry, as well as Greenpeace and the core environmental groups. There are a set of companies that have been corporate heroes in advancing these ideas. There are a set of companies that have the political power and the political influence, as well as the market influence, to make this happen. And fifth, we're going to begin something that we call the 5% solution. And this gets to the core of the political polarization that we face in this nation. We have, unfortunately, over the years, developed a system of gerrymandering and partisan law that locks in the power of the two dominant political parties. Look at anywhere else in our economy and see if you can find institutions that were dominant in 1900, 1950, year 2000, and still today. What corporations are still in business that were in business back then, dominating? But we still have the Republican and the Democratic parties dominating. Not the same, but they've been changed. But they clearly do not represent the broad spectrum of the American people. 40% of people are choosing not to join either one of them. But there are a few states and a few districts where gerrymandering and the gaming of the process has not become complete. Those are the battleground states, battleground districts. And in those districts, usually less than 1% of a shift in the voters determines the outcome of the election. In this last election, President Trump was elected only because about 78,000 people voted for him in 3 states that pulled him over the edge. Less than 1/100 of 1% of the voters across the country, I believe, that elected him. The 5% solution is about identifying a block of 5% of the citizens in 5 to 10 swing states, 30 to 60 swing districts, who are committed to holding their lawmakers accountable, to bringing folks from across the aisle together to help protect the environment. We pull together that 5%, and that 5% becomes a powerful political lever to really compel lawmakers to set aside wedge politics when it comes to environment and say, we will sit down, both sides will bring the best conservative principles, the best free market principles, and the best progressive principles together and develop solutions to this issue. That's how we can pragmatically attack the polarized political system that has taken hold of our country and that is more dangerous probably than any of the individual issues that we're trying to advance. So, again, feeling a little disoriented. I'm feeling a little disrupted. We all are. This is a new environment that we're entering into. Let's try not to hold on fast to what was and to change back, turn back the clock, simply resist, or simply promote where we are. Let's become conscious as a people and as a movement, take the pragmatic steps that we can to take back the power as regulators, as business leaders, as environmental activists, as progressives, as conservatives. We have the opportunity to work together to solve these problems. The steps need to be chosen. This is not a time for fate. This is a time for conscious, intentional action and a strategy. I encourage you all to find your own ways to put that forward in your lives. And for those of you who may wish to join us in Dallas in 2 weeks to work with a remarkable set of people to try to advance these ideas, please do let me know. I'd be happy to see if we can get you there. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do. I see a question.
Try to speak loudly. Rob Alexander, I'm at James Madison University, where I do work as a dialogue and deliberation practitioner. So I appreciate the interest-based negotiation work that seems to be modeled by your company. I'm wondering if you can comment on, because when we look at the research and the practice of that sort of negotiation, one of the assumptions is that we can agree on what are facts. Right? So if you could say something about this rise of, I hate the term, the alternative fact, and how that's shaping some of these conferences on climate, I'm guessing you might be saying that the public face of this notion of alternative facts is different than what we're hearing in the private realm. But then why have those alternative facts to begin with, particularly around the climate conversation?
Yes. Well, the system, reality is, of course, complex. It's not gray, but it's a lot of, diverse blacks and whites. The media system, the political system, takes that complexity and turns it into great simplicity. And in the process, it caricatures the complex ideas of different people that are part of this process. I actually believe that the climate community has really harmed itself by trying so hard to impose the doctrine of certainty on climate. Not that climate science isn't very clear. Not that it is not well known that carbon emissions are driving climate change and it's primarily human caused. Those are basics that almost everyone agrees to. Most people in the skeptics community even agree with that. But we have tried to impose controls on the skeptics community rather than trying to understand what the skeptics community is trying to tell us. When I talk to climate skeptics, I find they're not so skeptical of the science of climate. They're only skeptical of the science because they hate the solutions that they see put on the table. When they hear Naomi Klein say, because of the climate disaster, we need to move forward with a global progressive agenda to install the United Nations to nationalize and internationalize certain industries so that we can protect climate. And of course, she's an extreme. She's a very small part of the climate community, and very few people adhere to her views. But this is what climate skeptics hear. Climate skeptics tend to be people who love freedom. For them, a free operating economy is as inspiring as a free-flowing river and ecosystem is to an environmentalist. What they're saying to us is they don't want us to inadvertently destroy freedom as we're trying to protect the environment. If we can hear that instead of trying to argue with them and say, well, don't use these facts, these aren't true, use these facts, it's all known, everybody agrees, then they will soften and they'll come with us. And that's what I've found. Once you're able to listen to the skepticism, once you're able to put skeptical ideas on the table and work with them, they actually kind of go away. But when we try to take them off the table and say, don't use those alternative facts, it's almost like they gain a following. A certain set of people want to hold on to those alternative facts because they know somebody's kind of trying to repress an idea. So I think that we've created our own problem with alternative facts around climate. And if we let all these ideas flow, even ideas that are not scientifically supported, those ideas will gradually recede and not become important anymore. Make sense? Next question. Yes.
So, I don't think that. What would you suggest on a more local level to do the kind of thing that your company is doing with big players? So, local politics are just the latest thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes more so. So, do you have any suggestions?
Local is where it's happening. And local, as I say, there are 30 to 60 swing districts around the country. This is a state that has them. The state itself is a swing state. You can have a national impact very locally simply by holding your politicians accountable in both parties to collaborative, bipartisan solutions that don't adhere to special interest agendas of anybody's. Environmental, labor, corporate, whatever. Hold your politicians accountable to that at the very most local level and at the congressional level, and then state, governor, Senate, and you'll have a big impact on politics. 100 times what we in California would have. In the marketplace, also recognize how much power you have over consumer and retail brands. If you rail against Exxon, if you rail against Shell Oil, if you rail against a mining company, you're not going to have much impact. They don't have a big consumer face. They don't care that much. But if you reach out to your consumer brands and your retail brands, you talk to the local retailers, and you penetrate through them to the CEO office, you send a missive to the CEO, and it will end up in the C-suite somewhere with somebody dealing with it. Sometimes you won't even see it, but if you've got a good case, it will have an impact inside those companies. And then follow up to make sure that they're responsive to you. And ask them what they're doing specifically, and don't take the look at our website for an answer. Ask them what they're doing systemically to protect climate, forests, oceans, and say that that's an expectation of yours as a customer. I've seen how much power that has. It has much more power than the market power that you have as an individual consumer, or that a few people have, because people inside those companies, in addition to knowing that consumer pressure is relevant to them, they actually really care. And they hate the idea that people would be thinking badly of them and their companies on these issues. It really bothers senior executives to know that's the case. So realize the power that you have as a consumer and use it.
Great. Could we give Bill another round of applause?
Thank you.
Bill, thanks for your 5 great insights and some pragmatic solutions on the way forward to protect our environment and still have a market economy. So on behalf of the superintendent, our Corps cadets, staff, and faculty, thank you for coming to talk to us today.
Absolutely.
And best wishes as you move forward with your project in 2 weeks.
Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
thanks to all of you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, now I'd like to move on. It's really my honor to introduce the 2017 Captain Ron Erchul Environment Leadership Award. The award recognizes a Virginian who has made a significant individual effort to improve our environment. Members of Virginia's environmental community nominate candidates for this award, and they are judged on the basis of their vision, expertise, commitment, integrity, communication skills, accomplishments, and diplomacy. The award is named for VMI Professor Ron A. Erchul, Dr. Erchul, who was the founder of this very symposium. Last year's Erchul Award-winning recipient, Dr. Mark Edwards, could not be here today. It's kind of the tradition. But I have asked Mr. Dennis Tracy, one of our first winners of the Erchul Award, and now president of the Smithfield Foundation, who will explain the award process and help us award the Erchul Award. Dennis, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's me. Sorry. You know, I can still hear Captain Erchul's voice and his laugh, and I know about his dedication to this program. So to me, this is quite the honor. It is something that I know he is watching down on as we speak. The older I get, I realize how old I really am. I am the class of 2000 for this award. And on behalf of Joe Maroon, Taylo Murphy, and Jay Gillum, I think Joe's here with us in the back, it's my pleasure to handle this portion of the program. From the nominations we received for the 2017 Erchul Environmental Leadership Award, online voting narrowed the field. A panel of judges comprised of past award winners selected this year's winner. We want to thank the individuals who took time to honor their colleagues by nominating them for the award. A list of all nominees appears in the Symposium program on page 34, I think. You should look at that and congratulate those folks as you see them, as well as a list of the past recipients. A talented group of environmental leaders here in Virginia were nominated for this award. I think we all would agree to that. And the wonderful fact is that in addition to this amazing group, there are thousands of environmental leaders working hard every day for Virginia's environment who are not on that list. And I thank all of you for working hard for Virginia's environment as well. As hard as it was to make a choice, the judges came to a consensus for this year's winner. And I would ask Colonel Gray, would you please share who this year's recipient is? It's in the envelope, and I have assured that the accounting firm that has been involved in this does not have La La Land listed on that card.
This year's winner is Miss Nikki Rovner of the Nature Conservancy.
Congratulations, Stevie. You got to go over there. All right. Great. Let me tell you a little bit about Nikki. Nikki has dedicated her professional career and her personal life to better our environment. Nikki's expertise comes from nearly 20 years of leadership. Before joining the Nature Conservancy, she utilized her undergraduate and law degrees as a Chesapeake Bay Foundation intern, a Virginia Division of Legislative Services employee. Nikki is a Sorensen Institute political leadership graduate and served as chair of the Virginia United Land Trust and on Governor McAuliffe's Climate Commission. During the Warner administration, Nikki's hard work and leadership were important ingredients in ensuring a significant bond package for parks and natural areas. The bonds ultimately passed with 69% of the vote. In 2006, Nikki was appointed Deputy Secretary of Natural Resources by Virginia Governor Tim Kaine, where her diplomacy skills helped her as she worked to accomplish Governor Kaine's goal of protecting 400,000 acres of land in 4 years. Former Secretary of Natural Resources Preston Bryant says, Nikki was central to our success. She developed the game plan, involved state agencies, sold it to the General Assembly, and kept Virginia landowners engaged. Nikki has shown tremendous vision by working tirelessly on important legislation for state parks, natural areas, waterways, including the Land Preservation Tax Credit, Agriculture Best Management Practices, and Stormwater Local Assistance Fund. Ann Jennings, the Virginia director of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, says Nikki has demonstrated an unsurpassed work ethic and knowledge base on the critical state and federal matters affecting preservation of our natural resources. She is always insightful and thorough in her guidance and advice, as well as innovative in her approach to advocacy. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation staff have worked with Ms. Rovner for many years on issues including funding for clean water, land preservation, and restoration of the Bay's native oyster. They state, over our long-term partnership, we have come to value deeply Ms. Rovner's expertise, teamwork, and intelligence in working to conserve the natural resources of our region, including valuable lands, the Chesapeake Bay, and local streams. For Virginians, present and future, Ms. Rovner's approach to conservation is both visionary and practical. Nikki was a founding member of Virginia Forever, a remarkable coalition of business and conservation organizations whose diverse members work together to seek increased natural resource funding from the General Assembly. Her role and communication skills at Virginia Forever were recently featured in a Virginia Business Magazine article. Nikki works to ensure that all voices and views are heard and considered when formulating policy. She understands that natural resource issues require solutions that work in every corner of the Commonwealth. And as Dennis Tracy says, Nikki is a true professional, a very, very nice person who is a pleasure to work with and who is truly deserving of this award. Congratulations, Nikki. Nikki'd like to share a few words.
I just can't pass up the opportunity to express my gratitude, so I'll just take a few minutes to do that. First, I want to thank VMI for this symposium. We heard from Bill Shireman about looking for common ground, and I'm someone who believes strongly that common ground can be found by those who are willing to look for it. And this is a place where we do that, right? I mean, the business sector, the government sector, and the nonprofit sector are all here, and this provides us an opportunity to build a community. And I think in building that community, we have really fulfilled the dreams of Captain Erchul when he created this conference so many years ago. So I want to thank VMI for that. I want to thank the people who have supported this conference for many, many years, the agencies that have sponsored it, the businesses that have sponsored it, the Virginia Environmental Endowment, because I have benefited so much from attending this conference and look forward to doing so in the future. I also want to express my gratitude to the committee that voted on this award. Actually, everyone in the conference voted, so thanks to all of you, no matter who you voted for. I voted for somebody else. And the folks who've won this award before, so many of them have been mentors to me and are such valued colleagues of mine. If I tried to name them all, it would be too many, so I won't do that. But you know who you are, and please accept my gratitude for that. I also want to thank Virginia Forever and Chesapeake Bay Foundation, really trusted and valued partners who nominated me for this award. And then I also want to say that I have gratitude for setbacks sometimes. I've actually experienced one in my career recently. And the reason that I have gratitude for those kinds of things is because I think they allow you to learn things that you couldn't learn any other way, really. And so it's so nice to receive this encouragement in the form of this award when I'm sort of mid-career, figuring out what my next steps are. And I know that I'm going to move forward. I know that if I accomplish anything, it's going to be because of the partnership of the people in this room and the other people who attend this conference. And I'm just really, really, really grateful for that. I look forward to the rest of the conference. I look forward to having a voice and sharing this recognition with other people in the future. And I certainly share it with the other nominees for this award because they all deserve this kind of recognition. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming this morning. Great speaker, well-deserved awardee. Now we'll proceed with the second day's events. We have about 10 minutes before the next set of panels goes. If you'll please refer to your program or the app. We won't get together again at the end, so I want to thank you all for coming, and drive safely home, and we look forward to seeing you for the 29th Annual Environment Virginia Symposium next year. Thank you very much.